Hey, come on in. It's Ask Me Anything today here on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me right here on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live and have a fun time on the show. We try to make it fun here. 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday is where you can catch us. We also simulcast over here on my Facebook page. Thank you guys for being here today. We also simulcast over on my YouTube stream. What's up? So thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live here on Instagram, we do have it on replay. One of my cats is playing voraciously. She's running all over the place. You are 15 years old. There's no reason for you to be running around like you're a little kitty. That's crazy. Now she's meowing. Skunk, you're driving me crazy. Don't you know I have a live show I'm trying to do here? She loves running around on Jimmy Rant Studio for some reason. Okay, where was I? IGTV. That's where you can watch it on replay. So be sure to check it out there on Instagram. You can also check out the replay on YouTube. Just type in a keyword Jimmy Rant. She's still running around, you guys. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rant. You will find the show. And then finally, pop on over to JimmyRants.com. It's the official website for this here show. And once you're there, you can see all the past episodes of the show. My cat is still running around my studio like a madman. She's shoom, shoom, shoom. And while you're there, click on the Patreon link, and a donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. All right, you guys. So today is Friday, and you know what I do on Fridays? It's Ask Me Anything. Literally, it's an open floor for you to ask any question you have. For me, I have a lot of experience having been out here 15 plus years in low carb diets, in fasting, and cholesterol, in podcasting and book writing, literally anything you want to ask about me. I'm an open book to answer any question you want to ask. And as I say every week, I challenge you to ask something you don't think I've ever been asked before. I've been asked a lot of things over the years on various people's podcasts. So if you think you have a question I haven't been asked before, please feel free to hit me up. Okay, so before we get to your questions, I got a couple that came in ahead of time. I want to get to a few of these headlines that I printed out here. I've been talking about the U.S. Dietary Guidelines. My Jimmy Rants from yesterday, I detailed the final draft of what's happening with the Dietary Guidelines for 2020 here in America, and it ain't good. Like, we keep hoping beyond all hope that they're finally going to wake up and realize low-carb nutritional health science is real, and they need to be paying attention to it. But according to what I shared yesterday, not so much. Well, guess what? We're not the only country dealing with dietary guidelines and wanting them to clean them up. This is from Australia. The Australian of the Year in 2020 is a guy named Dr. James Muke. And this week, he said, "We are living with a flawed dietary guideline, which we have obediently and blindly followed for the past 40 years, and it's literally killing us." He's an ophthalmologist who spent about 3 decades working on preventing and treating blindness in many poor countries. He's comparing the number of lives lost to COVID-19 with the number of lives lost to type 2 diabetes, and he's exactly right. Like, I know we don't want to face the facts, but we have as many people dying of type 2 diabetes complications as we do from COVID-19. And yet, what's the grand pandemic we're all worried about? Right? Yes, that is the spelling, Carnaway, M-U-E-C-K-E. That is correct, James Muke. And so he said, in the first 3 months of COVID-19, we tragically lost just over 100 Australian lives to COVID-19. During the same time, exact same time, they lost over 5,000 lives to type 2 diabetes, and unnecessarily so. So we're not alone. Here in America, we have flawed dietary guidelines, and so do they in Australia. So it's good to see that there are other people trying to champion real change taking place. Have you heard about the new plant-based meat products? There's so many of them now popping up. I did a Jimmy Rants earlier this week, you guys, all about this 3D technology being used to make a steak. As they literally have all these little core pieces of product that's all plant-based and turning it into a steak. Guess what they turn to next? They're turning to a new plant, and this is not a joke. When I first read this, I thought this has to be a joke. The new plant is wood. They are making a new meat alternative made out of wood. Now, unless you're a chipmunk, that's not a good idea. Consumers often think of plant-based foods like soybeans, wheat, peas, coconut, and rice. But there's a brand new company that has an ingredient called Silpro, Sylpro. It's made from fermented and broken down wood. They're serious, you guys. They want people to eat wood. We're taking wood, a known food plant, and putting it back into the food supply again. And that's something that's never been done until now. That's also something that could completely change the equation between supply and demand for food at the global level. Wood is completely renewable, widely abandoned as a food product around the world. You have basically got an unlimited supply of it with an interesting supply chain on top of that. When you think it can't get weirder with the vegans, it gets a whole lot weirder with the vegans. Like, are they kidding me? Now, the problem is, and what I talked about the other day, is most people are completely oblivious to the things that they're putting in these plant-based kind of burgers, even Beyond Meat burger. Oh, it tastes like a burger, so it must be just like a hamburger. Yeah, no. Do you think they're going to actually brag about it having wood in it? Like, are they going to get splinters up in their... Like, What else do we have? Oh, new study, you guys. How many of you know kids, maybe you have a kid, with autism? Have you heard there's a brand new study, and this was published just this month, vitamin D levels in children and adolescents with autism. The study aimed to investigate the relationship between autism spectrum disorder and vitamin D levels. So they looked at 25 hydroxyvitamin D in 1,529 patients that have autism on the spectrum between the ages of 3 and 18. They have no other chronic diseases. They compared according to their sex, their age, and their birth season, lab parameters of various kind of micronutrients and other things. So what did they find? Get this, in the results. Vitamin D deficiency or an insufficiency was found in 95% of the patients with autism. Now, that doesn't get you to take your kid outside in the sunshine and get a little bit of the natural vitamin D that comes from that sun hitting their skin. I don't know what will. And that was pretty shocking. So, good news coming out of the research world that vitamin D, now, how the companies will spin that is, well, we have vitamin D in our milk, and it's so microscopic an amount of vitamin D. I think it's something like 400 IU, maybe 200 IU in milk. When you get out in the sun and you're getting thousands of IU into those kids, right? And you can also take supplemental. During COVID-19, I bumped my supplemental up of vitamin D to around 25,000 IU a day. Typically, I do about 10,000 a day, but since COVID-19, trying to boost my immune system, I've been taking about 25,000. I backed it down a little bit when I get out in the sun, since it's warmer now. When COVID started in March, it wasn't quite as warm, wasn't getting outside. But now that I'm getting outside and getting lots of sun, I backed it down a little bit. But the point is, getting a boost in your vitamin D actually helps. Somebody's asking about the author. Sorry, I did the read-only version, but the title of it is vitamin D levels in children and adolescents with autism. If you Google that title, you should be able to find the research. It's on PubMed, ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Anyway, you could Google it, and it should be right there on Google. That's how I found it. Have you missed a mortgage payment? According to a new report, one out of three people missed their July rent and mortgage payments. And this is going to be a real problem, guys, that a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people are struggling financially, and they're not able to keep up with their rent, with their mortgages. I know a lot of the renters have been given some grace period, but at some point, those people that are the landlords and the people that have the mortgages, they're going to have to come collect. Like they can't let these people slip their payments indefinitely. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I saw that headline, just broke my heart. 32% of people missed their July rent and mortgage. And people are under a lot of financial stress right now. Okay, so we got another study here. This one's from Clinical Nutrition Journal. Animal protein intake reduces the risk of functional impairment and strength loss in older adults. So recently I did a Jimmy Rants talking about a detailed study that looked at the combination of eating protein with regular resistance training exercise, and it being the best for strengthening bone and muscle and losing body fat while gaining muscle at the same time. Well, this new one, animal protein intake reduces risk of functional impairment and strength loss in older adults. They looked at the Framingham Offspring Study participants, which was almost 1,900 people. They followed them for 14 and a half years, and they looked at their diet. So the results were the participants who consumed a higher level of protein maintained higher functional scores, meaning everything worked well in the little test that they did for them. And after accounting for baseline skeletal muscle mass and physical activity, only the protein group was linked with lower risks of having an impairment in your function. So I thought that was kind of good, good, showing that as you get older, that's all the more reason you need to be eating more protein, all the more reason that you need to have strength and agility. And of course, a lot of people that are older say, well, I can't do that. I don't have the energy anymore. If you add protein seems to be the key. And we're seeing that as a theme a lot more, you guys. And I'm loving that it's getting out there in the research. All right, and the last one I'm going to share before we come to your questions. Again, this is Ask Me Anything. If you joined us late, get your questions ready. Ask your questions right down there. And when the time comes, we will come to you guys here in a minute and answer your questions. But did you hear what Chipotle did? They are currently testing, you guys, cauliflower rice. So there it is, Chipotle cilantro lime cauliflower rice. And they have test marketed it, or they're currently test marketing it in 2 locations with like 56 stores, but 2 specific locations in, I believe it's Denver, Colorado, and in the state of Wisconsin. So they'll have grilled cauliflower, cilantro, lime juice, and salt for those people who want to lower their carbs. Now, I got to tell you, I know they came out with those bowls, the various healthy bowls, like a year or so ago. They had a paleo bowl, they had a Whole30 bowl, they had a all protein bowl, and they had a keto bowl. Well, recently, maybe a couple months ago, I got the keto bowl. Can I tell you I'm disappointed? Because they put a crap load of guacamole on top, but there was no sour cream. It's like, you can have sour cream on keto unless you're dairy free. You can have sour cream, so why isn't there sour cream? And I'm very spice intolerant, and it about blew my head off. It was so spicy. And it was so little food that I was hungry an hour and a half after I ate it. So they could have done a better job with the keto bowl. I guess you can customize a bowl. But now, coming soon, if this test market does what they think it will do, the cauliflower rice will be added to the Chipotle menu. Now, I've been out here 15 years, and one of the first things I hammered when I was blogging, when I first started blogging 15 years ago, was if a restaurant chain embraces the low carb movement, they're going to see such a boost in their sales. Now, it's only taken 15 years for somebody to finally take that seriously. I know there's a few other places that have catered to keto, but it just seems to me it's a well, duh. They have so many vegan options. Why not have these options for keto and low carb? So pretty cool, you guys. All right, let's see what we have over here with the questions that came in ahead of time. And then we'll come to your questions. First question, I know nuts will cause a stall on keto, but are nuts inflammatory? What a great question. So let's be clear what nuts are. Peanuts are not nuts, okay? So if you're considering that a nut, peanuts are not nuts, they are a legume. I know some keto, low-carb people like to eat peanuts, and it's probably not the worst thing in the world for you. It's inaptly named. It's not a nut. It's a legume. But that said, almonds, cashews, walnuts, you kind of go down the list of all these different nuts that you might eat on a ketogenic diet. Nuts are inflammatory when they are roasted in seed oils. And the sad part is most nuts are roasted in seed oils. If you go to any convenience store and you grab some random package of roasted nuts, turn it over on the back and you're going to see either roasted in soybean oil, roasted in cottonseed oil. It's going to be in some very rancid, nasty oil you would never want in your body. And the reason that's important is that is what's inflammatory. Now, nuts are very high in omega-6 fats, which also makes them slightly inflammatory, but the thing that's far worse than the nut itself as far as inflammation goes is what they're roasted in. So if you get nuts, like almonds for example, get raw. If you get raw almonds, on the package it just says almonds, okay? And I love raw almonds. If you eat cashews, they're a little higher in carbohydrates, but if you get cashews, try to get them raw. Walnuts raw are amazing as well. Pecans, of course. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question. I think the actual inflammation that would be from the nuts themselves is minimal. It's the roasting that's causing the inflammation that would be very detrimental. And yes, I suppose it could cause a stall in your weight because your body has to deal with that inflammation somehow. But thank you for that question. Next question. Are you not going on the keto cruise next year? Facebook post sounded like last year was the end. Well, as far as I know, last year was not the end. I know COVID-19 canceled it for this year. And then next year, it's up in the air. I know it's planned for next year, but currently next year is up in the air too, because what's it going to look like with COVID-19? Are people going to actually get back on a boat again after COVID-19? I don't know. So no, as far as I know, last year was not the last one, but I guess we'll see, right? All right, let's go to your questions and see what you have to say. Again, if you just joined us late, this is Ask Me Anything on Jimmy Rants, and it's your opportunity to literally ask any question that you want of me. I have expertise in keto and fasting, podcasting, cholesterol, book writing, public speaking, building an online presence and branding, marketing, and then literally anything you want to ask about me personally. So fire away. We're going to come to you in due course. Got 40 minutes left in the show to get to all kinds of questions. So let's see who's got the first one over here on Instagram. Ever been to the reddit.com keto science site? Yeah, Reddit has a lot of really interesting things. It's so funny. My first exposure to Reddit was when somebody said, "Oh, you should hear what they're saying about you over on the Reddit keto page, Jimmy." And so I went over there and they were having a field day about how fat I was. I was like, okay, hi guys. Nice to meet you. Any questions you have? You know, it was fun. But yeah, Keto Science page over on Reddit. They do really good work. Sometimes it's like diamonds in the rough kind of information that you find there. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Reddit. Brittany says the food industry has been using wood in food for a while. It's called cellulose fiber. It's often added to products to falsify the net carb count. Yeah, and I've seen those things before, but this seems pretty explicit with making it into a meat product, with wood. I was kind of miffed at that. Beth says, you just reminded me to be sure to take my D3 K2. Yeah, you go, girl. Do that. My heart goes out to all those in financial distress. Yeah, there's a lot of people right now that are in a lot of financial distress over losing their job or a lack of income. I'll tell you very openly and honestly here, you guys, other than my book royalties, which I got a check in April and I'll get another check in October, other than those, I haven't really made any money of consequence this year from any other source. I usually have sponsors on my podcast. I don't do sponsors here. It's why I do the Patreon page. So if you like what I do here, click on the Patreon link at jimmyrants.com. It definitely helps me out. But it's been tough because all these companies that usually support my work vis-a-vis sponsorship, they're holding on to their money because they don't know what's happening in the market with all the turmoil in our society right now. So it's been a little bit tough, but I'm not boo-hooing about it. I mean, everybody's going through some semblance of having to cut back. So we're just all doing our part to try to survive. I'll tell you what I've been doing. My chickens lay me a bunch of eggs every day. So literally for the past few weeks, literally all I've subsisted on is cooking eggs cooked in butter and some cheese. And that's pretty much been what I've eaten as my totality of energy the past few weeks. Just trying to make sure I'm not putting myself in a predicament where I don't have any money. So you do what you gotta do, I suppose. Brittany says, how much do you feel stress affects weight? Oh, Brittany. Great question. I think stress impacts weight in the insulin resistant a lot worse than it does the insulin sensitive person. So if someone handles the impact of having a higher blood sugar in their body, whether it comes from carbohydrate or whether it comes from a stress response, which the reason your stress would increase your blood sugar and thus would raise your insulin and make you gain weight is because of the adrenaline that comes from the stress or the cortisol, the stress hormone, then impacting blood sugar, then insulin, then weight gain. So that's kind of the mechanism how I think it could work. But I think people who are insulin sensitive get a little bit of a stress relief. They don't quite get the same reaction that those of us with insulin resistance have. And I've even talked about stress resistance. So those of us that have insulin resistance, you might as well just chalk it up that you have stress resistance, meaning when stress comes on, even if you try to be chill about it, your body physiologically is going to react much different than someone who is insulin sensitive. So yeah, how much, I guess it depends on your level of insulin resistance, Brittany. If you're very insulin resistant and you barely can eat any carbs without gaining weight, then you're extremely insulin resistant. You probably will have more problems with weight gain. I can tell you in the midst of this COVID-19, I have not changed. I just told you I only eat eggs. I have not changed anything about my diet in a negative way. And I've gained 15 pounds just out of nowhere. Now I know they say, oh, the COVID-15, but those people are eating junk food. I'm literally eating no carbs and eating eggs and butter and cheese, and I've gained 15 pounds. And I think we need to be very kind to ourselves in the midst of this very unprecedented time. And I know that at some point when all this releases, all this kind of stress releases, that it will come back down again. But right now, the stress is real and it's showing up as weight gain. But thank you for that question. If you had to choose a favorite vegetable, what would you choose? Ribeye is not a vegetable. Hey, my ribeye steak does eat all the vegetables I need. That's the only plant matter I need in my life. Now, if I had to choose one vegetable, well, all right, how about this? If I had to choose one plant-based food, how about that? Is that fair? So I don't have to like make it a vegetable. I want to make it a fruit. If I had to choose one favorite plant-based food, it would be an avocado. I think avocados provide texture and taste and flavor. I love me a good guacamole, so that would be what I would choose as my one favorite plant-based matter. I'm the main moderator and poster to Keto Science. Oh, cool. Donnell says, what supplements are you taking for COVID? So I just mentioned that I'm taking 25,000 IU of vitamin D3 every day. I'm also taking fish oil supplementation. I'm not going overboard on the vitamin C because it does upset my stomach, but I know it has efficacy. My multivitamin has vitamin C in it. It also has zinc in it, which I know those are being used as a preemptive. I'm also using CBD oil, squirting it underneath the tongue every single day. All the things that I'm doing are designed to boost immunity and to lower inflammation. So really anything you can do to lower blood sugar, lower inflammation, boost your immunity are going to be helpful. And of course, as a preventative measure, and of course, if you're eating a nutrient-dense, real whole foods-based diet, we also know that that's being beneficial in helping people, because the people getting COVID-19 and the worst symptoms from it are typically the people that have the worst metabolic health. So that's what I'm doing, Donnell. Thank you for that question. 10 pounds up in the last 2 weeks, says Brittany, from the stress of moving. It's blowing my mind. I've done nothing different. It's maddening. Yeah, I'm not surprised, Brittany. I think a lot of people, and yeah, she's going through a move in the midst of COVID-19, you guys. So as if COVID-19 wasn't bad enough, you're adding one of the biggest stresses people go through, and that's a big move. So, but I know it's a good thing. In the end, that weight should come back off. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? Nancy says, how is Dr. Lemansky doing? Is he still fighting the good fight in Puerto Rico? So, Nancy, thank you for that. I know Dr. Lemansky is Dr. John Lemansky. He's a medical doctor friend of mine. I used to do a podcast on Fridays with him the last couple of years. We ended it when I went on sabbatical. And so he did move his family to Puerto Rico, and then COVID-19 hit. And so he is a medical doctor with a lot of experience and training in emergency care. And so he worked remotely from his home with like 10 different computer screens, all remotely with 10 different hospitals in America to help guide the COVID patients. He did that for a little while. And the last I checked, he is now working in a hospital somewhere in America. I'm not sure where he is, but he's in one of the hospitals that's treating the front lines of COVID patients. And he's there right now. So I know his wife is really worried about him. And he's just been stretched to the hilt. I recently did a podcast with him over on the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. So go to llvlc.com and you can find that podcast if you look up his last name, Lemansky, Limansky. Go listen to llvlc.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Rob says, do you see live low-carb events happening in the U.S. and worldwide in the wake of COVID-19, or will the Zoom conference prevail? Well, for now, Zoom is the only way it's happening, Rob. And I don't know when that's going to be lifted. I know the European Union actually has banned any visitors from the U.S. right now. How long is that going to last? I've been told that it could happen and last for years. Like not just the rest of 2020 and maybe a little into 2021. Years. And so who knows? I know that all the major events next year are being planned. Keto Con and Keto Fest and Low Carb USA and Low Carb Crew. All the different ones are being planned. But who the heck knows? I guess it's going to depend on what happens later this year with COVID-19 and over winter. I just have a feeling we're not going to see a land event for low carb keto probably for a little while. And if I'm being honest, I don't think we're going to see any next year. I don't see how it's going to happen unless something major changes. and maybe even into 2022. Now, thankfully, we have technologies like all of these ways to see people digitally, and it's not the same. I mean, I miss hugging people at conferences. That's kind of what people know me for when I go to conferences. I'm a hugger. So if you've ever met me in person, you know I'm a hugger. And so I don't know what will be the parameters. Even if we can go back to a live event, how do you interact with people? It's going to have to change from what it was before. Think about all the things we took for granted for so long. We took for granted. You just walk right up to somebody and hug them. We took for granted. You give them a high five. You just took for granted that you could talk in close proximity and not worried about all your droplets flying all over the place. I think the whole world has changed with COVID-19, and who knows what it's going to look like when we come out the other side. Bonnie says, have you heard of Prove It Keto OS drinks? Supposed to be all natural ketones, fermented. Keto OS Nat drink. Fermented, but I was just wondering your thoughts. Supposed to help you aid in ketosis. Bonnie, I did a Jimmy Rants recently that I read from a letter that the Prove It company got from the FEC. And they said, you need to stop making claims about your products that are not true, or we will shut you down. And I have personal experience with this company. They are the shysterest of shysters. Please avoid this company like the plague. They are preying on the gullibility of people, the desperation of people. Can I say it any stronger? I think they are a crap company. Okay? You do not need to be drinking your ketones, fermented or otherwise. The last time I checked, the best way to make ketones in your body is not through an exogenous source of drinkable, overpriced ketones from a multi-level marketing company. The last time I checked, when you cut your carbs and you moderate your protein and you eat more fat, you get all the ketones your body needs endogenously. So please avoid them like the plague. Was I clear? I can't be any clearer than that. Tracy says they want us to eat wood, but they demonize us for using wood for building. True. Kira says, I always worried about my son and his generation playing video games, staying indoors so much that they never go out in the sun. What will that do to their vitamin D levels? Also found out vitamin D is a hormone, according to Ivor Cummins, so important. Yeah, I've been talking about vitamin D. It's not actually a hormone, but it has a hormone-like property in the body. So if your hormones are out of whack, what happens? When one hormone gets out of whack, all of them get out of whack. This is why when you have thyroid that's suppressed, it actually impacts all the rest of your hormones. It's why insulin is high. It messes with all the rest of the hormones. So it stands to reason that if your vitamin D level is out of whack, that it's going to mess with all your other hormones. So yes, I agree with you. I think this generation living on video games and living on iPads and staying indoors and not having PE, not being encouraged to go out and play after school, so many things have kept kids out of the sunlight. And I do think that's impacted their vitamin D levels greatly, and thus leading to some chronic diseases. Nancy says, on autism and vitamin D, parents of autistic children would love to get them outside, but it's very difficult. Low vitamin D numbers are probably because of the difficulty in getting some of those kids to go outside. It's one of the problems, but it might be worth supplementing for them who can't emotionally handle going outside. I agree with you. Once they're autistic, that supplementation is probably a better idea. I think the point of that study was don't let them get to that point where they're vitamin D deficient. So before they become autistic, get them vitamin D through the sun, and maybe it's a preventative measure. I think that was the point of the study. Kira says, do you think taking vitamin C pills makes a difference versus getting sun and making it yourself? Well, not vitamin C, vitamin D. You don't get vitamin C from the sun. You get vitamin D from the sun. So I think you can get a mix of both. So yes, I think taking vitamin D supplementation and getting sun I don't think you can necessarily, and again, it's going to be highly individual, because I think some people have that nice reaction on their skin, which then converts it very readily. Now, keep in mind, if you have low cholesterol, then that conversion on your skin of the sun hitting the skin and turning to vitamin D is going to be very impaired. So this is an important part of getting sunlight to get vitamin D. If your cholesterol levels are low, either naturally so, or if you're taking a statin medication, you will not get the full benefits of the vitamin D production with your skin. Did you know that? So this is why having ample amounts of cholesterol in your body is a good thing, because then that synthesis of this on the skin to turn the sunlight into vitamin D can happen. But plus, you've got people that are hyper absorbers of vitamin D, and you got people that are under absorbers. So I guess it depends on the individual. Test your level before you go crazy doing anything, but definitely try sun first, and then if your levels aren't coming up, then try supplementing. But thank you for that question. What do you or your doctor recommend for vitamin D to be, says Mike. So that's a great question. It depends on who you ask. I've interviewed the foremost authority on vitamin D in the world. His name is Dr. Michael Hollick. It's been many years since I talked to him, but I've kept up with his work, and he generally says somewhere between 40 to 50 is his goal. Well, according to some other people that I've talked to, that's anemically low. Definitely over 30 as the bare minimum. But if you want to optimize it, a lot of the people I've been talking to over the years, over 50 for sure, and probably between 60 to 80 as the sweet spot. So typically, if I don't supplement, I can't get to that 60 to 80. So I have to supplement to be in that range. The last time I checked, mine was like 65, which is perfectly fine. But try to shoot for that 60 to 80. There are some people that worry about toxicity of vitamin D if they supplement. And the only occurrence of someone having a major toxicity to vitamin D3 supplementation, it was an attorney of all people. One of my podcast guests told me about this one time. He said this attorney was trying to take 10,000 IU of the vitamin D3 supplement, and he accidentally took 1,000,000 IU of vitamin D3. So that's a much more than 10,000. And of course, he got toxic levels of vitamin D in his system, and it had consequences. But if you're taking 10,000 IU, I don't see that you would have that kind of an issue. Crystal says, what are your pick up and go snacks? Ketones. And I don't mean to sound snarky, Crystal, but I don't snack. When you eat enough food in your meals, then you don't need to snack. When you have enough food that nourishes you, making sure you prioritize getting protein, you get the natural fats that come with that protein, you minimize the carbohydrates, you keep your stress levels low, you sleep well, you do all the things, you move, all the things. You don't need to snack. If you're having to snack between meals, it means something's wrong. Like, you should be able to eat a meal. Like I had my meal this morning around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I haven't eaten anything, no snacks, probably won't have a snack or anything until I eat my second meal, probably somewhere around 4 to 5 o'clock. See what I'm saying? So I think it's a little bit of trying to keep up your old habits with your keto lifestyle when you say, I want some snacks. Now, that said, if you get hungry, eat something, and that's what you're asking. What would you eat? I do love nuts, the raw nuts like we were talking about earlier. Again, don't get the roasted because they've got the inflammatory oils. But if you get raw nuts, those are probably fine. I like Parmesan cheese crisps, those little wisps kind of things. And the moon cheese, I like those. It's just cheese is all it is. If you can handle dairy, those are good options as well. Yeah, like literally anything that's keto. I don't think we have to make this complicated. Even if you wanted to just get like a little piece of meat and just eat that. At the end of the day, you don't complicate this. And the way people complicate it is they feel like they have to limit their calories. They feel like they have to keep their portions real small and eat lots of meals all throughout the day. And I'm saying eat enough in one meal and you don't have to snack. But thank you for that question. All right, thank you, Facebook. Great questions there, you guys. Let me pop over here now to my YouTube channel, see what you guys have to say. Let's see. Edith says, "What's up, Jimmy? I'm thinking back to your coronavirus stream and forgot to ask you, do you think that fasting for 23 hours a day is excessive, or does that improve immunity?" That's basically OMAD is what that is, 1 meal a day. I think OMAD is wonderful. If you get great benefit out of fasting for that long and you feel good and you do it, absolutely. Like anything that would give your pancreas a break and your whole body a break is a good thing. And I don't think we need to bemoan anyone that wants to boost their immunity that way. Yeah, I think fasting is a very effective way to do that. And cheap. Like it doesn't cost you anything to not eat. I'm thinking of doing an extended fast, says Mike. Any ideas on how to break a longer one being carnivore? Well, we just did a long fast recently on Jimmy Rant. Sorry, my nose is itching again. Right here is where the cats like to hang out, and I have itchy nose when I do Jimmy Rants. But we just recently did a 7-day fasting period, and I did daily videos for those 7 days. So go back right here on YouTube, go back to my Jimmy Rants archives from about a month and a half ago when we did a 7-day fasting period. I am carnivore and I did the fast just fine. And I told you how to break the fast. I gave all those answers to what you're asking about. So go check those out. Don't want to repeat what we did in 7 days worth of Jimmy Rants. So, let's see. Vadim says, "I was a bit shocked to find out that you are headed for a separation. Met you once. It's personal, but there's a chance you salvage your marriage." No, I'm apart from her, and we're gonna move on with our lives. But thank you. How do you deal with leg cramps? Says Canary Black. Electrolytes don't help. Well, if the leg cramps are in your backside of your calf, electrolytes do help. And I would say if you're saying electrolytes don't help, maybe you're missing a few of them. So let me give you all the elements. Water is the first thing. Salt, potassium, magnesium. Okay? I use a few of these little products. This one here is a concentrated sodium and magnesium called Fasting Drops. Okay? And so you can use these fasting drops from Keto Chow. And they've got concentrated forms of it. You drip it into the water. My thinking is if you used electrolyte supplementation and it did not help, then it means you did not use enough. So I'd say boost it more. And of course, people freak out when you start talking about boosting and eating more things like salt. But you eat more. And if you're not getting the benefit, you have more. Because here's the thing, there's no harm from consuming those things. And if you over-consume them, you'll just pee them out. So if you're not getting the benefit and the relief from your Charlie horse cramps is not happening, then you didn't take enough. Okay? I've had great success on keto, almost 20 years eating supermarket protein. Why do keto gurus on social media put us down that choose this over grass-fed? What are your thoughts? Says Gez Keto. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think sometimes we get caught up in perfection in the keto space. And you know, it's certain people that feel like if it's not grass-fed and, you know, humanely raised and, you know, all those things, that it's not as good. To me, the worst of the worst of the worst is all the crap that's out there. So, is supermarket, grocery store meat the best quality you could possibly find? Obviously not. But is it better than the crappy garbage? Absolutely. So if all you can afford is the supermarket kinds of meats, then do that. So here's a little trick. If you use like conventional meats that are sold in supermarkets, cut off the fat on those, because that's the protein in those foods is not the problem. It's the fat, because what's in the fat of conventionally raised animals? Toxins. And so that's why they have a little bit of a problem for that, is the toxins that are in the fat. So the solution to that is, if you get a CAFO, conventionally raised animal, you trim off the fat and then you add clean sources of fat to it. So if you have a steak, and it's conventionally raised, you cut off the fat of that steak and then you add in like a clean source of lard or grass-fed butter or something to it, and you cook it in that. That's how you solve that problem. So I hate that they vilify it. I don't think they're explaining it clearly enough, like I'm explaining it here for you. It's the fat that they're concerned about, because that is where the toxins lie. In a grass-fed animal, there's not toxins in the fat because they've been raised humanely. They don't have the added hormones. They don't have all the junk that would be in the fat of a grass-fed animal. Hope that helps. Do you have any thoughts on omega-6 seed oils being a major player in obesity, or is it no big deal? Various people are big on that issue. Yeah, avoid them. I think omega-6 seed oils, or the seed oils, vegetable oils that have omega-6 fats heavily in them, is the major driver of inflammation along with carbohydrates. So yes, I'm very much in that camp of get them out of your diet. Are you a Cowboys fan, says Craig. What do you think about their owner, Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott? So yes, I am a Cowboys fan, and I am wearing Dak's jersey. I think what they're doing to Dak Prescott is disgusting. It's like every good quarterback in the league in the history of the NFL has always gotten paid. Why don't you pay him? Jerry Jones, you've got a franchise worth almost $5 billion. What are you doing? Pay the man. What more does he have to do? He's setting records galore in Cowboys quarterback history. You paid Zeke, you paid all these other people, you paid Amari Cooper. It's time to pay your quarterback. Unfortunately, this year, they can't do it now. He's on the franchise tag, and so sorry for all you non-sports fans. But yes, I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan ever since Roger Staubach in the late 70s, all the way through Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin in the glory days in the 90s when they won Super Bowls, and then Tony Romo and the whole shebang. So yes, I've been a huge Cowboys fan for my whole life. All right. Well, thank you for those questions, you guys. I'm going to pop over here now, back over to my Instagram page, see if you guys have any other questions that came in while I was jibber-jabbering with everybody else. Teresa says, are you intermittent fasting? What does that look like during COVID? So I'm being very intuitive with my eating. Like if I'm not hungry, I'm not eating. If I'm hungry, I'm eating. So intermittent fasting kind of comes natural for me. Typically in a day, if I'm getting enough food in one meal, I might make that my only meal of the day. Most days I'm eating 2 meals. I never eat more than 2 meals in a day. So from the last meal that I have until the next meal the next day, that would be an intermittent fasting. Now, it's really interesting because I typically am up extremely early. Like today I was up at 1:30 in the morning. Some days I'm up at 3, some days 5. And then I go to bed early, so like 7:30, 8 o'clock. So if I have my meal at say 8 o'clock in the morning, and my last meal the day before was like 4 o'clock, that's a pretty good like little intermittent fast of about 14 hours. Then I eat at 7 or 8 o'clock the next day, and then don't eat till about 4. That's a good little chunk too. So I get 2 brief periods of intermittent fasting. You could definitely get some benefits if you tightened up the eating window and went like 16 hours and you ate in an 8-hour window. So I guess people break it up. I don't really worry about it so much and be so anal about it as other people are, but I do think you can get benefits, and you naturally fall into that when you nourish your body with real whole foods. But thank you for that question. Mom Needs Coffee says, I want to learn more about inflammation. Where's the best place to start? Great question. So my co-host on my podcast called Real Talk airs on Thursdays. He's currently taking a bit of a sabbatical himself away from the show. His name, Dr. Will Cole, and he's got a fantastic book about this very subject called The Inflammation Spectrum. So go check that out on Amazon, wherever you buy books. But the inflammation spectrum talks about all the things that inflammation does in the body, all the bad things, all the, why inflammation is actually a good thing in the body, what inflames the body, what are things you can do to dampen down inflammation. That is your go-to resource for all things inflammation, but check it out. Donnell says, great tip on cutting the fat off of the CAFO meats and adding in fresh fat. Any thoughts about using aluminum foil? We use it a lot. I don't think aluminum foil is anything bad. I don't think you get any transfer of the aluminum onto the food unless you're like cooking it deeply, like in an oven for hours or something. Like I know some people do like a roast or something and they cover it up for hours. Maybe it leaches into the meat that way, but I haven't used aluminum foil in forever. What do you use it for? If it's just to cover up a bowl that's got food in it, okay, it's probably no big deal. But if you're cooking with it, maybe it being at high heat and then sitting on top of meat or whatever thing you're cooking might leach some of the aluminum. So yeah, just be careful about that. And speaking of aluminum, fun fact, did you know you could get aluminum toxicity from your underarm deodorant? So what was this, about it was longer ago than that. Maybe like 10 years ago. I got a toxicology report. They took some of my hair. When I had hair, they took a hair sample and I turned it in and they're like, oh my gosh, we see like crazy high levels of aluminum. And they said, do you use like conventional underarm deodorant? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Old Spice or whatever it was at the time. They're like, go get it. And so I grab it, I turn it on the back and they said, is there aluminum in the ingredients? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's like the first or second ingredient. They're like, stop using that. I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to use? And they said, try to find a natural form. And they gave me the Tom's brand. It's okay. I currently use one called Native. I get it at my local CVS store. It is ungodly expensive, like $13 a stick, but there's no aluminum in it. And it smells good and I don't sweat. Like I used to be a heavy sweater. And then when I sweated, it was really stinky and it was gross. So that's why I used the Old Spice or whatever it was, because it worked to keep me from sweating and stinking. So this new one is really good, but I did not know that my conventional underarm deodorant was giving me toxic levels of aluminum. Now, if that had remained unabated and I didn't change, what would have happened to my health? Who knows? Like it's not good for you to have those heavy metals in your body, but just thought I'd throw that in there since you mentioned aluminum. All right, looks like a couple more people added some comments. What would you suggest for someone who has good control of their diet but seems to be stuck? Well, it depends on what you mean by you've got good control of your diet, and it depends on what you mean by stuck. Are we talking about weight? Is that what's stuck? And perhaps the way you look at it is, okay, if you're doing everything right in your diet, maybe it's not your diet that's got you stuck. Maybe it's stress levels. Did you know that if you miss one night of sleep and you have a very poor night of sleep, just one missed night of sleep, you already are insulin resistant? And people don't think about these kind of things that could impact their metabolism. Think about a night that you had a crappy night of sleep and you wake up the next day. Were you hungrier? I bet you were. Were you more fatigued? I bet you were. Did you have any other like differences in how you felt? I bet you did. And so all of those things can play a role in this. So look at if your diet is indeed under control as you describe here, and you're stuck in your weight and it's not really doing anything, you need to start looking at lifestyle things. How is your movement? How is your stress levels? All of these things matter, and if you don't pay attention to those, then all the perfect diet in the world is not going to undo all those other things. So take a look at the totality of your health and not just your diet. But thank you for that question. I'm newer to this community and wanted to see if there's any doctors online I can reach out to. Yes. So there are a ton of doctors out there. Many of them are right here on Instagram. So definitely you could just type in DR and you'll find a bunch of them in this community. As far as like a doctor list, I tried to keep one a few years ago, but it is murderous trying to keep up with how to, get all of those assimilated and keep them updated. Some go out of practice, some change from keto, and so it's just a mess. I know Diet Doctor, so dietdoctor.com has a great ketogenic low carb doctor resource of doctors around the world. So go to dietdoctor.com and you should be able to find that resource pretty darn easily. Or if you do a Google search, low carb doctors, all in quotation marks, again, you should find that link that takes you directly to that page. So you can click on a map and it shows you the doctors that are in your area that use ketogenesis. But I hope that helps you out. All right, you guys. So that is it. We are done with Ask Me Anything. I always love doing this show on Fridays. I will tell you, I have a ton of topics to talk about. I literally, over in my other building, which is where I do all my research for Jimmy Rants, I literally have 20 articles just waiting for me to rant on, and all of them are really good. So I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to try to do more of them. And I also want to incentivize you that if you support my work through the Patreon, I'm going to try to give you some incentives. So what we're thinking about doing is several things. So you guys will notice that I do Jimmy Rants bonus episodes. And I see Temple Stewart just popped in here. She was one of my guests on my podcast this week. And what we want to do is, before those videos and those podcasts air from my podcast, I want to post them on the Patreon page for those of you that support my work, so you can access them before they come out. So I've got probably 6 different interviews that are already in the can that we could throw up there for you guys to enjoy as a thank you back for supporting my work. I'm also thinking of maybe over the weekends, either Saturday or Sunday, have a Patreon supporter only kind of private Jimmy Rants episode where I would just jibber jabber with you guys, maybe do a topic that I don't do here. So that's an idea that I'm thinking about doing. I'm also thinking about going off of the Instagram format for the show and maybe doing a Jimmy Rants Facebook page, like a very dedicated Jimmy Rants Facebook page that would let me put some of the article links into Facebook. It doesn't really let you do that here on Instagram, but there I could do links to the various articles that I talk about so you can engage in it and give your feedback. It might be a nice little community idea. Or at jimmyrants.com, we're thinking of going directly live from there. These are all just ideas that we're working on. Just wanted to let you know what's happening. But I definitely want to give that bonus content for all my Patreons. And again, if you like what I do here, please go to jimmyrants.com, click on the Patreon link. I really, really appreciate all the support you guys give me here. And I love doing the show. I really do. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, engage live, at least right now. You can still engage live on Instagram Live. You need to go follow me over on Instagram. That's at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. By the way, if I do go to one of those other things, I'll still simulcast on Facebook and Instagram and all the rest. But it might be a dedicated place soon. So we also simulcast over here on my personal Facebook page. So thank you guys for being here. And also over on my live YouTube stream. Thank you, YouTubers. Thank you, everybody, for being here today on Jimmy Rants. Watch the replay here on IGTV as soon as it's over. We also throw them up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword, Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And then, yes, the aforementioned jimmyrants.com shows you all the past episodes as well. And please do click on that Patreon link. And any donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. All right, guys, that's it for now. We'll be back again real soon with more Jimmy Rants. See ya. All right.